On a crisp autumn morning, Henry Walker, an 89-year-old man, walked slowly down the main street of a small coastal town in America. The golden leaves fell gently in the breeze, forming a natural carpet on the sidewalk. Each step he took seemed to blend with the soft rustling of nature. He kept his head low, holding tightly to his worn-out fedora hat. His face, etched with wrinkles from time and loss, revealed a life filled with hardships. But Henry wasn't just an old man wandering through life. He was on a mission to find the biggest missing piece of his world, his long-lost grandson. Many years ago, his grandson Michael, just 9 years old at the time, disappeared after a heated family argument. Michael's mother had died in a car accident, and his father, Henry's only son, was so consumed by grief that he took his son and vanished, leaving Henry with no way to contact them. Henry had sent letters, tried phone calls, and even sought out private investigators, but it was all in vain. Every attempt to reconnect with them ended in disappointment. But despite the passing years, Henry's hope of finding his grandson never faded. Now, at the age of 89, Henry could no longer sit idly by. He decided to leave home, heading to a small town called Ashburn, where he had heard rumors about where his son and grandson might have settled. It was a slim lead, but it was all he had left. After days of walking and countless rejections, Henry found himself standing in front of a small, worn-out cafe named Ashburn Deli. The cafe wasn't particularly inviting. The sign was faded, and the windows were streaked with dust. There was nothing special about the place, but something about it pulled Henry inside. The bell above the door jingled softly as Henry entered, and a familiar creak echoed as the door shut behind him. Instead of warm greetings, Henry was met with the cold, scrutinizing gaze of the cafe owner, a woman in her 50s named Martha. She stood behind the counter with her arms crossed, eyeing Henry from head to toe. With his shabby clothes and scuffed shoes, Henry looked more like a homeless man seeking shelter than a customer. "What do you want?" Martha asked, her voice dripping with disdain. Henry slowly approached the counter, bowing his head slightly in humility. "I just need a cup of coffee. I've been walking for days and I need a place to rest." Martha's arms remained crossed as she raised an eyebrow. "This isn't a charity. If you don't have money, you'd better leave." Henry met her eyes calmly. He had lived long enough to understand that sometimes people's contempt didn't stem from hatred, but from indifference toward those they deemed less fortunate. "I have money," Henry replied softly, pulling out a crumpled bill from his worn coat pocket. "Just a cup of black coffee, please." With a reluctant huff, Martha snatched the bill and poured him a cup of coffee. Henry thanked her and took his cup to a small table in the corner of the cafe. He sat near a window where the weak sunlight filtered through, casting a pale light on his tired face. As Henry sipped the hot coffee, his eyes glazed over, lost in the steam rising from the cup. His mind drifted back to the memories of a time long gone. He remembered Michael, his bright eyes and innocent smile, the days when they would sit together on the porch, sipping lemonade on hot summer afternoons. But now those memories only brought pain. Where had Michael gone? Was he still alive? And if he was, would he even remember his grandfather? Suddenly, a warm voice interrupted his thoughts. "Excuse me, sir. Do you need anything else?" Henry looked up and saw a young man standing in front of him. The man was tall, with a kind face and gentle eyes. He wore a simple white shirt and jeans, holding a dish towel in his hand. His gaze was friendly, though tinged with curiosity. "No, thank you," Henry replied softly, but something about the young man's eyes made him pause. There was something familiar in them, something he couldn't quite place. The young man smiled politely. "You look like you've had a long journey. This cafe may not be much, but we try to make our customers feel comfortable." Henry nodded, but his mind wasn't focused on the man's words. He was too caught up in the young man's eyes, those eyes that reminded him so much of his grandson. "Young man," Henry's voice trembled. What's your name?" The young man hesitated for a moment, then replied with a slight smile. "My name is Michael Walker. I own this cafe." The world around Henry seemed to blur. He set his coffee cup down on the table, his hands trembling. "Michael? You're Michael Walker?" The young man looked at him, puzzled. "Yes, that's my name. Why do you ask?" Henry's eyes filled with tears. his voice breaking as he spoke. "Michael, I'm your grandfather, Henry Walker. I've been searching for you for over 20 years." Michael stood frozen, as if the entire world had stopped. Memories from his childhood flooded back, slowly at first, and then in an overwhelming rush. He remembered the old man who used to take him to the park, who told him stories about the past. He remembered sitting on the porch together on warm evenings and how life was simple and filled with love, until the tragic day when his mother died. After that, his father had whisked him away, and all contact with his grandfather had been lost. And now, after all these years, here was that same old man, standing before him. "Grandpa!" Michael's voice cracked as he realized the truth. Without hesitation, Michael rushed forward and embraced his grandfather, holding him tightly. Both of them stood there in the middle of the small cafe, tears streaming down their faces. It was a reunion neither had thought possible, but one they had both longed for. After more than 2 decades of searching, Henry had finally found his beloved grandson. And not only had Michael survived, but he had also grown into a successful, kind-hearted man who owned his own business. The joy Henry felt at that moment was indescribable, a mix of relief, love, and overwhelming happiness. From that day forward, the two of them never let time slip between them again. Henry spent his remaining years close to Michael, watching with pride as his grandson's cafe became a cherished part of the community. And for Michael, the discovery of his grandfather brought back a piece of his heart he hadn't realized was missing. Together, they made new memories, ones filled with warmth, laughter, and the unbreakable bond of family. And so what started as an ordinary day in a small-town cafe turned into a moment that neither of them would ever forget.